Gross living area is the adjustment everyone feels confident about. Dollar per square foot, it's clean, it's precise. But what if that number isn't measuring size at all? What if it's still carrying concessions, time, or land? Today, we're going to continue to strip down sale prices layer by layer and see what gross living area actually looks like when it's measured on the right number.
Welcome to ValuTalk, your source for property valuations, real estate insights, and what's really driving the market. And now here's Douglas.
All right, welcome back. In episode 2, we normalized concessions. In episode 3, we extracted time. And in the last episode, number 4, we removed land pressure through site size. So today, we're going to take gross living area through the same layered sequence we've been building, and we're going to watch what actually happens when the sale price is finally cleaned. But we're not just going to run one regression, we're going to run 4. Same sales, same neighborhoods. The only thing is changing is what the sale prices are still carrying. And that's where it gets real interesting. So here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to briefly just recap where we left off with site size. Secondly, we're going to apply that site size adjustment as a unit-based transformation to the data set so we get that 4th sale price. Then we're going to analyze gross living area across all 4 sale price layers. The raw sold price, the sold price adjusted for concessions, the sold price adjusted for concessions and time, and finally the sold price adjusted for concessions, time, and site size. Still the same methods, still the same neighborhoods. What is changing is what the sale price is still carrying. Let's get into it. All right, we're still working in the same neighborhoods that we have in the past episode. This is the older neighborhood, and we have the newer neighborhood down below. We're going to start off in the older established neighborhood. At the end of the last episode, we were looking at removing land pressure. So we ran linear regression on site size against the actual sale price. Then we had ran it against the sale price adjusted for concessions, and then the sale price adjusted for concessions and time. We saw that the coefficient didn't really move. It did in some instances, but in others it didn't. But not because land changed, but because price clarity changed. So today we're going to carry that forward. So let's bring up the data that we've been using right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply a unit-based adjustment against site size, so we can take out that land distortion, because its gross living area can't be measured on a price that still contains that. So this isn't creating a new theory. It's just simply removing the land contribution from what we derived from the linear regression. So now every sale price is going to be adjusted for concessions, time, and land, and that gives us that fully layered sale price. So now we can measure structure, gross living area. So let's go ahead and apply the adjustment against the adjusted sale price for concessions and time. So we're going to use the unit-based adjustment, and we're going to use that as our sell price to layer on, and we're going to use the site size. Now what we want to do is bring all these site sizes as if they all have the same site size. So we're going to use the median site size, which is 10,018 square foot. So we're going to apply it to 10,018 square foot. This is going to adjust sales either up or down to that. And now we're going to use that $3.16 per square foot that we had derived, and we will now create a new adjusted sell price column for concessions, time, and site size. And this is the new sell price that we'll use to look at structure now. So let's go ahead, get up the regression tool, and we're going to look at linear regression on gross living area across 4 sell prices now. All right, let's start out by loading up the raw data from the older established neighborhood that we're working with. So at first, we're going to look at just the actual sold price against gross living area square footage and see what we get for an adjustment from here. So around $100 a square foot is what we're getting. So let's go ahead, and now we're going to look at it layered when we had normalized the transactions for concessions. So we're going to look at just the adjusted sale price for concessions and see what the gross living area adjustment would be here. So it barely moves. It's still sticking around 100, 101. So we're not doing too bad. Now let's look at what happens when we adjust it for concessions in time. So that's the next layered prices here. Let's see what happens here. So around $92 a square foot. It's still softened slightly. It's still strong, still stable. But now let's see what happens when we look at that sale price adjusted for concessions time and site size. So we'll load that up and take a look at that chart. Wow, down to 67, around 67. That's not a rounding difference. That's structural. So what that is telling us is that a portion of what looked like the structure value, the gross living area, was actually the land pressure. So when the land wasn't isolated, gross living area was absorbing it. So once the land is removed, the gross living area stops carrying that weight. That's the difference between measuring size and measuring price distortion. All right, now we're going to move into the newer neighborhood, the builder-heavy neighborhood. Last time we left off there, we had the same data that we were working with, that we have not applied the site size adjustment. Now, if we remember in the last episode, we'd established that the site size after we're applying concessions and time was $2.25 a square foot. So let's go ahead and do the unit-based adjustment for site size on the newer neighborhood. So again, we're going to use the adjusted sold price for concessions and time, and then we're going to use the square footage site size, and we're going to use the median, which is 6534. That's going to be our based adjustment to bring all the other site size into relative size. So we're going to use 6534. And then it's going to ask for our site size adjustment, which is $2.25. That's what we established. So we're going to have now an adjusted sell price roll for concessions, time, and site size. All right, so now what we're going to do is jump back into the regression, and we're going to take a look in this neighborhood and see how regression reacts over the 4 layered sell prices from here. So let's jump into that. All right, we got the data for the newer neighborhood loaded up. We're going to look at just the sold price versus gross living area first and see where we land. We're at $189 a square foot. So let's go ahead and look at it for when we normalize the market for concessions. So now we have the adjusted sale price for concessions, right around the same square foot adjustment that we're getting. So let's go ahead and keep moving through the series. And we're going to look at the same now, but adjusted for concessions and time. 187. So we're really not collapsing. There's no big structural shift yet in the data. Let's go ahead and pull it up for the last one that we just got through adjusting for site size and see if we get any kind of shift in the data yet. Still sitting at 185. So this tells us something very different. The pricing separation in this neighborhood between land and improvements, it's already clean. It was just, we were using the same method. It's just a different market behavior. Because this is the point. If gross living area changes dramatically when land is removed, then structure was never isolated. But if gross living area holds steady, that tells you the market was already segmenting the value correctly. The coefficient isn't the story, the movement is. If you've been following this series, you know we've been layering prices deliberately. So before we go any further, I just want to pause and show you what's actually happening inside these regression models. Because slope, R-squared, and outliers, they make a lot more sense when you get to see how the data responds. So let's just take a few minutes and we're going to walk through how regression behaves. Let's start simple. What you're looking at here is sell price plotted against gross living area. Each dot represents a sell. Nothing adjusted yet, nothing forced, just the market as it actually occurred. So before we talk about adjustments or coefficients or formulas, this is always the first step, seeing the data as it exists. So now as the trend line comes in, all we're doing is asking a basic question. As the size increases, how does price tend to respond? This line isn't saying every property behaves this way. It's just describing the central tendency of the market. The relationship is summarized here, the slope of the line and the R-squared value. But these numbers don't exist in a vacuum. They only make sense in the context of the data underneath them. So watch what happens as we remove the most influential outliers one at a time. Each time a point leaves the model, the trend line responds, the slope adjusts, the equation updates, and the R-squared changes with it. This is important because regression isn't static. It reacts to the data you allow it to model. So when we talk about data screening or model refinement, this is what we mean. Not forcing a result, but understanding how individual observations influence the overall relationship. At this point, we now have a refined model. It's not perfect, not absolute, but it's representative of the market behavior that we're analyzing. Let's zoom in on a single cell. The vertical distance you see between the cell and the trend line, that's the residual. It represents the portion of the price that's not fully explained by gross living area in this instance. The trend line gives us the expected price based on size. The residual shows us how far reality deviates from that expectation. So this is where R-squared becomes meaningful. R-squared tells us how much of the overall price variation is being explained by this variable and how much remains unexplained. That unexplained portion, that's not an error, it's information. When we zoom back out, we're returning to the broader market context. See, as we move along the trend line, each residual shows us the same idea repeating across the data set. Some of the cells are sitting close to the line while others deviate more. Regression doesn't eliminate the judgment, it organizes it. So in other words, R-squared isn't a score to chase. It's a way of understanding how much confidence we can place in a variable and how much of the story lies elsewhere. That remaining variation, that's where market nuance lives. And that's why regression supports analysis and it never replaces it. All right, back here in the office. Today wasn't about finding a gross living area adjustment. It was about testing whether the gross living area was being measured on the right sale price. In the established neighborhood, once we removed the land pressure, the gross living area coefficient dropped significantly. That tells us structure was absorbing the distortion. So over the new neighborhood, though, gross living area stayed stable across all the sale prices. That tells us structure was already isolated. This is why sequence matters. If you measure gross living area on a price that still carries concessions, time, or land, the math works, but the meaning doesn't. So next time, we're going to take this fully layered sale price that's been adjusted for concessions, time, site size, and now structure, and we're going to move into paired sales analysis. We're going to use the same logic, same discipline, layer first, interpret second. So until then, I'm Douglas. Stay curious, stay sharp, and always stay focused on value.
ValuTalk is produced by DataHub Solutions. For tools, insights, and more, visit our website at datahubsolutionsllc.com. Stay informed, stay ahead.